There's my contact info that I mentioned earlier. If you would like to contact me, I'll leave it up for just a few seconds so that you can copy it if you want. Back to what is Project 2025. The other name for this is called Manifest Leadership. That's what it's been called since 1980, when its first document was written by the Heritage Foundation. And this whole thing from 80 through now has been published for every Republican president, and it's called Manifest Leadership, and it is the GOP platform, or that has been its history, up until about 2012, and it began to take a righter lean toward extremism or more direct changing of government policies, and etc. And Kevin Roberts is the president, and he tells us that America needs to be ready for the new American Revolution. He repeats that in speeches. He repeats that in his writing. And I want to give you a quote that summarizes this the best from Amanda Tyler, who is a lawyer who is the executive director of BJC. It is a renowned 89-year-old professional non-for-profit that's whole focus is working on the separation of church and state. She says, "What's different about Project 2025 is the sweeping nature of its plan. It would really rewrite the federal government and change policies in so many different areas at once in a way that would hasten our journey down that road to authoritarian theocracy, meaning belief in one God of one type." This is how you get to Project 2025. You do not need to buy the book. You can do this website and you can download the PDF just to look at it. You don't even have to keep it on your computer permanently. Here's the book that it shows that you can buy should you want it. Here are the 3 directors that put together this whole 900-page document. The lead director was Paul Dans. There is a name drawn through his name because, interestingly enough, about 2.5 weeks ago, when the Republican candidate Trump mentioned he'd never heard of Project 2025, and on the same day, the USA Today published an article by Harriot, Harriott, he is on your bibliography, stated that Paul Dans had been instrumental in doing this, in promoting it, and was the lead of it. Paul Dans resigned. He said to the public, my job's done. So anyway, the other 2 men that were lead on it are Spencer Creechan and Troop Hemingway. Their goals, they have 4 specific goals, and they are very telling in that they restore the family as the centerpiece of American life to protect our children, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats, and secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls, quote, the blessings of liberty, end quote. God is not mentioned in the Constitution in any form. And In God We Trust was done in 1954 by Eisenhower, post-World War II, to make a statement against communist beliefs. So do not believe when they say it's in the Constitution that we are a creation nation, a Christian nation. It is not there. And the quote, the blessings of liberty, is not in the Constitution either. The author of this introduction is the former director, Paul Dans. Now, they have 4 pillars they focus on. All of this is going to be given to you because I'm going to send my presentation to Lindsay after the fact, and she's going to put it on the website, and you can look at it, read it, run it off, whatever. You don't have to take notes today. So the pillar 1 puts in place a consensus view of how major federal agencies must be governed, and it exists brackets out the differences for the next president to choose his path. Pillar 2 is a personnel base, and it will allow any candidate to build their own professional profiles and coalition members that will be available so that the president and those of his president election team for officers, jobs, positions, cabinets can streamline the appointment process. Pillar 3 is the Presidential Administration Academy. It has been in place and is working as of January 1, 2024. This is an online education system taught by experts that support the Project 2025 agenda and its ideology. It explains how the government works, should it be a new employee, how to function for the government effectively, in essence, how to be a loyalist. And it will host in-person seminars with advanced training and set the bar for what's expected in senior leadership. So the job is to have this presidential academy have a whole list of people ready to take the place of current civil servants. This will be an oath-signed group of personnel ready to take place in cabinet positions, civil servant roles, etc. I'll go into more of that a little bit later. Pillar 4 is called the playbook, and that is, in essence, the rest of Project 2025 that's listed on page 1 through 900 plus. It is a forming agency teams and drafting transition plans to move out on the president's utterance of, quote, when he says, so help me God. They plan to push buttons, have instrumentation on sending out pink slips, getting mini balls rolling. That's just a little window into what the playbook is about, in addition to the 900 places. Now, these proposed changes in Project 2025, they have a table of contents, and Lindsay has that and was given to all of you ahead of time that you can look at that. I want to read the table of contents to you because it is so telling. One definition that I want to share with you before we start, because it runs throughout the theme of Project 2025. It follows the unitary executive theory. That's their ideology. That's an expansive interpretation of presidential power that aims to centralize greater control over the government in the White House from the White House. So I need to go down the thing here, sorry. Thank you for your patience again. Okay.
And then you're going to want to go back to that from beginning up there. And then, yeah, that will get the full screen. Thanks, Kay.
Okay. Now we're ready to just see me.
From current slide. Sorry.
Pardon?
Oh, yeah.
You just want
So
to
you're
see
going to
me.
have to, you're just going to have to keep clicking through until you get to the slide that you want, you know.
They're
So
all
that-
done. They're all done.
Oh, you have a different one. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's me from now on.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay, so go ahead. And let's go ahead and stop sharing your screen then if you don't have, wait, but you still have something you want to look at?
No.
Okay, so then
No.
you can stop sharing your screen. So go back. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. All right.
And do you want me on gallery or?
It doesn't matter.
Speaker.
The viewers can choose how they do it.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, so
All right.
go ahead,
So,
Kay.
With that definition of presidential power that they're going to implement, that is kind of the summary of how they want to go about things. gives the president, if elected Republican, to get rid of any independent agency at will. So here's the table of contents that you need to hear. Just listen to the table of contents. It is so self-revealing. It is so blatant and so clear. They're not hiding a thing. There's a blueprint. Second chapter, role of Christian nationalism. Third, gutting the civil service. 4, ending racial equity efforts. 5, eviscerating LGBTQ rights and equality. 6, restricting sexual and reproductive health and rights. 7, hardline immigration policies. 8, ending climate change efforts and restricting environmental studies. 9, ending woke military policies. 10, reforming public education. And 11, restricting human rights and existing international bodies. She has shown that on the screen. 12 and 13 are merely the summaries of everybody who participated in this organization and their profiles. So, did you hear the violence in the table of contents? They're not very shy about what they wish to do. Now, the categories that they do, as they wrote this document, every person, sometimes 2 people, wrote a chapter. But as they did it, they interwove in other chapters and referred back to them. So I can't take you down that list of chapters and get it covered. So I have 14 major categories of changes they are going to make in summarizing this document. And so I'm going to name that category as I talk about it, so I won't give them to you ahead of time. So the first category we're going to cover of the 14 is called governance and government changes. And I'm just going down the list of what they have listed. They're using an ideology of ordered society and ordered liberty and hierarchy control, meaning authoritarian government. All of those words tie into what authoritarian government means. They're going to end DEI, all diversity, equity, and inclusion departments, agencies, policies, etc. They're going to reshape the Justice Department, place it squarely under the Republican president's authority, going directly to the president. They're going to install a loyalist attorney general, and any subsequent lawyers will be called conservative warriors as a label. They're going to go after non-compliant prosecutors and judges in America and see if they can de-seat them or de-employ them. They're going to establish a new cabinet, and it is massive. It is going to include Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, as well as a portion of Health and Human Services. It will be the 3rd largest department in the nation working for the government. It'll have over 100,000 employees. They have not named it yet. They're going to abolish the FBI and make it a political task force. They're going to limit the U.S. role in NATO. They're going to develop more nuclear weapons. They're going to reduce immigration numbers per year significantly. They're immediately going to deport illegal immigrants. I have a quote for you that is horrifying. This is from Tom Homan. He was Trump's former head of the ICE, and he plans to be back in that position. This is his quote. "I'll be on his heels coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation force this country has ever seen. They ain't seen shit yet. Wait till 2025. That is in the document. They're going to pass sweeping tax cuts for the rich and the elite. They're going to outlaw pornography. They are going to continue to support abolishment of a portion of Amendment 14, the birthright citizenship portion. We have an American Immigration Council that has been in existence for over 150 years, since 1868, and it is the Constitution, and it extends rights and liberties to formerly enslaved people. to anybody granted citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the United States and provides equal protection under the law to all citizens, end quote, from the Constitution. They are going to take birthright citizenship out of the Constitution. They are going to use the Department of Labor to emphasize Judeo-Christian tradition. They're going to pay wages, time and a half for Sundays in the hope that businesses will shut on Sundays and get people back to church. They're going to encourage, quote, communal rest, end quote, which means resting on the Sabbath. And they're going to end the Fair Labor Standards Act, which protects workers for Sunday. They're going to create a new policy. It's almost like an office, but it's called a policy of Office and Science and Technology. You can find on page 60. Now, anytime I quote you a number of a page from now on, it's on what page in Project 2025. You can go to that page and read what I'm telling you. This is from page 60. Office of Science and Technology Policy. Finally, the next administration will face a significant challenge in unwinding policies and procedures that are used to advance radical gender, racial, and equity initiatives under the banner of science. Similarly, the Biden administration's climate fanaticism will need a whole of government unwinding. As with other federal departments and agencies, the Biden administration's leveraging of the federal government resources to further the quote woke end quote agenda shall be reversed and scrubbed from all policy manuals, guidance documents, and agendas, and scientific excellence and innovation should be restored through this particular policy called Office of Science and Technology. Here's what they're going to do to federal employees and civil servants. They're going to reinstate President Trump's Executive Order 13957, commonly known as Schedule F. They're going to replace federal employees with partisan loyalists. Remember, I told you since January 2024, they've been working on the Presidential Academy. Well, that's how they're going to do this. And they're also instituting what President Carter stopped in his administration, the civil service testing, because it was blatantly discriminatory. They're going to reinstate civil service testing, and they're going to replace up to 15,000 to 30,000 federal and civil service employees within the first 180 days, and they must sign an oath of loyalty. In their own words on the introduction, which would be page 14, Pillar 2, which we mentioned, this personal database will allow our candidates to build professional profiles and our coalition members to review and voice their recommendations. These recommendations will then be collated and shared with the president-elect team, streamlining this appointment process, end quote. They're going to move federal offices out of Washington, D.C. in order to reduce the number of nonpartisan long-term employees who don't want to move. They've already done that when they moved the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, was forced to move to Colorado. Those people had their lives set up. They were long-term civil service employees and federal employees, and they lost 77% of the employees because of a mandatory move. They're going to do that to many agencies. They're going to return to the 1880s civil service model. Here's what they're going to do to change security protocols. They're going to remove civil service security clearances and politicize who gets what jobs. In their words, quoted on page 213, the president should immediately revoke the security clearances of any former directors, deputy directors, or other senior intelligence office officials who discuss their work in the press or on social media without prior clearance from the current highest director or the president. They're going to stop people from learning overtime pay. That's another category. In 2024, you'll remember that Biden issued a policy for over 4 million workers that were eligible to qualify overtime pay, who were monthly paid or yearly paid people who couldn't qualify for overtime, he increased the overtime threshold. Well, Project 2025 is going to take that threshold away, saying if you've got a salary, you've got a salary, and it matters not how much you make. The next category is cutting funding for job creating programs. This can be found on page 664. The preamble in my language to this is we have an economic development administration called the EDA that's responsible for investing billions of our ARP dollars into transformative infrastructure projects across the nation. And according to the 2022 report released, the investment brought 220,000 jobs to Americans and generated 20 billion in private investment. Here is what Project 2025 will do. EDA grants should be consolidated with other programs and or eliminated, page 664. This is going to undermine the ability of federal government to invest in communities across our nations, and it will devastate the poorest of people, small business, and the overall health of our economy is the summary I'm giving of what it will do. The next big category, they're going to manipulate the data that our businesses use to keep our economy functioning. They're going to consolidate these departments: U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Census Bureau, and Bureau of Labor Statistics, known as BLS. All of these are independent from partisan interests. They have to be changed as is now by Congress to get any changes made. But what Project 2025 has in mind, they're going to politicize the Bureau of Labor Statistics and reduce the data collection capacity of the agency by taking the Census Bureau into other agencies and make it harder for us to see what the economy's doing, whether families' paychecks are growing, and what steps we need to do to alter things. And it's going to mess up all kind of statistical gathering and all kind of employment numbers and all kind of poverty levels. So they're really going to play with data that you can't get access to. The next big category is they're going to weaken child labor protections. These are their quotes from page 595. Hazard order regulations. Some young adults show an interest in inherently dangerous jobs. Current rules forbid that, even if their family's running the business, from working in such jobs. This will result in work shortages in dangerous fields and often discourage otherwise interested young workers from trying these more dangerous jobs. This means they're going to change existing Department of Labor policies, period. That means young people, lower income, who have to help their family make ends meet, or people who can't get a better job, are going to go into safe, unsafe, more dangerous jobs without safety nets. The next big category, they're going to restrict access to food assistance. They're going to reverse the course on SNAP. We know what that is. That's the food subsidy program for those in poverty, and the Thrifty Food Plan. They're going to reimpose ineffective work requirements. And all the recent studies show us that does actually nothing to increase employment, but it does drive down the number of people that will apply for food assistance. And that decrease in SNAP and the Thrifty Food Plan is found on page 299 and 300. On page 482, they are just flat out going to eliminate the Head Start program. Just going to wipe it off the chart, close the schools, fire the employees. The next category, they're going to eliminate which disability qualify veterans for benefits. Project 2025 proposes to have the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs cut costs by having fewer health conditions that can qualify for disability benefits. They don't list who's going to make those choices and who's going to decide that, but they're going to do that so that they can restrict disabled veterans' access to life-sustaining benefits, which is highly costly. Find that on page 649 to 500. Next category, remove safety nets for farmers. We do know that weather and all kinds of incidents impact our farming communities, and that is very common. It's not unusual. But there's going to be a restriction put on assistance to farmers, which would disparately impact low-income farmers and those without extensive assets to fall back on when things go awry. That's on page 297 in the mandate. The next category, they're going to eliminate funding for key transportation projects. This is, here we are celebrating how our economy is growing and the jobs that are taking place and the infrastructures projects that are beginning. That U.S. capital investment grant called CIG is targeted to be demolished. Bipartisan infrastructure law called the BFF, which was passed in 2021, is part of that GIC, and it awarded billions of dollars for key public transportation projects across the country. Project 2025 wants to literally do away with CIG. That's on page 635. Now there's quite a list of how our healthcare is going to change, and that's one main category, drastic changes to healthcare. They're going to delete the Department of Health and Human Services, and they're going to replace it with a department called Department of Life. In that department, they're going to abolish the Affordable Care Act, ACA. They're going to undo Medicare's new ability to negotiate lower drug prices, which was established through the Inflation Reduction Act. They are going to ask and instruct, not ask, instruct Congress to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act so there can be no negotiating of drug prices and there'll be no more court debates about whether Medicare can negotiate for prices or not. You can find that on page 465. They're going to push people toward private medical care options and challenge the use of Medicare. They've already started that if you look deeply at what Medicare Advantage plans are. They've already started pushing in that direction several years ago. They're going to encourage consumer choice. There are 33 million people enrolled in our traditional Medicare packages right now. Every one of them will be at risk. Here's their quote in their own words from page 463. Medicare regulations restrict choice of coverage and care. The next administration should reintroduce and restore regulations and demonstrations from the prior Trump administration that were withdrawn, weakened, or never finalized by the Biden administration. Subcategory under health and care is abortion and healthcare. Abortion is mentioned 199 times in this 900-page document. So they are definitively moving toward a national ban on abortion. They are going to sever funding for Planned Parenthood. They're going to criminalize abortion medicine through the mail. They're going to do that by weaponizing the long dormant Comstock Act and try to make it illegal to deliver medications by mail. Now, despite the DOJ and what the Supreme Court has said, that you can do those by mail at this point, they're going to go around that by looking and using EPA guidelines to say that there are chemicals, forever chemicals, you've heard that term, in the pill mifepristone, and they are subject to stricter regulations, and they're going to push the EPA's forever chemicals onto the FDA to get them to be convinced to say you cannot send those through the mail. That's on page 562. They're going to make easier access to medical records of anybody who uses any reproductive medical service. In their own words on page 497, we're going to withdraw the HIPAA, or HIPAA as we know it, the HIPAA 86 guidance on abortion, and withdraw the guidance of 87 that came about in June 22 that addressed patient privacy concerns following the Dobbs decision, but we are going to put that back in favor of against Dobbs, end quote. Next big category, racial discrimination and civil rights. The disparate impact standard is a quote, is a phrase that's used. And the things we're used to people filing lawsuits for and against on that topic are Title VI, Title VII, Civil Rights Act of 64, and the Fair Housing Act of 68. Well, the DOJ has a department called Civil Rights, and they determined if something is a disparate impact standard or not. So in their own words, a quote on page 72 and page 583, courts have ruled that even without evidence of overt intentional discrimination, such results might suggest discrimination. This doctrine of disparate impact could be ended by legislation or at least narrowed through the regulatory process by future administrations. They want to do away with it. Project 2025 plans to undercut and undermine accuracy of populations, ethnicities, and racial counts. We mentioned that when we talked about the Census Bureau and all the statistical databases that are not partisan, that they're going to pull together and tell them what they can do and can't do. And remember, Biden in March just signed the statistical directive number 15, says we will have standards for maintaining, collecting, and presenting federal data on race and ethnicity. They're going to do away with that. Look at page 680, saying that they're going to take control of that process and review any changes and change any data to be collected by race or ethnicity. They're also going to instruct the White House Office of Management and Budget on page 62 to reverse and ensure that other federal agencies will not aid in any collection of any accurate data to be had. They're going to undermine gender equity across the government. They're going to eliminate the White House Gender Equity Council. Look on page 62 of the document. They're going to disband it. And they're going to push for, quote, promoting life and emphasizing a narrow vision of what a family means. That means nuclear, male, female family. They're going to abolish every civil rights department or agency in the government. They're going to end Title IX. They're going to enact a Parents' Bill of Rights that will be a legal constitutional document. They're going to eliminate no-fault divorce. They're going to enable discrimination on sexual orientation and gender identity. They're going to begin that mass deportation of undocumented immigrants of up to 101 million, not 100, but 1 million people. And Project 2025 will make discrimination easier against LGBTQ plus youth. Look at page 477. They're citing religious exemptions will be a way to promote their ideas and their ideologies, which we know will result in more bigotry. They're going to instruct the new Department of Life to repeal a 2016 regulation that provides additional protections for foster youth related to sexual orientation and gender identity. And they're going to propose repeal the Respect for Marriage Act, which was signed in 2022, giving same-sex couples same rights as male-female couples wishing to marry. The quote in their document says the Bible should overrule laws Congress has set. If that doesn't curl our hair, I don't know what would. Project 2025 would roll back protections for all LGBT plus people in the workplaces as well, and that's on page 584 and 586. And they're going to restrict the application and challenge the Supreme Court case of Bostock and Clayton County that said there would be workplace protections for LGBTQ plus people, and that discrimination is prohibited currently by federal civil rights laws, and they're going to undo that. They're going to eliminate the EPA's Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. They're going to challenge the definition of what they use. When we go looking for is something doing pollution, other harmful effects, chemicals, etc. They call that an endangerment finding. That's in quotes. And the EPA uses that under the Clean Air Act to get things done. Well, if you look on page 425, they are going to challenge that and say that they're going to choose how they can use that and where they can use it. Then they're going to disband the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA or NOAA. And in their own words, on page 664, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shall be dismantled and its many functions eliminated, sent to other agencies, privatized, or placed under the control of states and territories. They're going to push the Department of Interior to conduct offshore oil and natural gas lease sales to the maximum extent permitted. They are going to allow fossil fuel companies to drill on more public lands, waters, and reservations. Looks on page 523. Now, a big category that has several things under it as we move toward the end is education. They're eliminating the whole Department of Education. They're going to privatization of schools called school choice or charter schools. They're rescinding the congregational charter of the National Education Foundation Association. They're flat out do away with it. They're going to roll back federal student loan programs, eliminate Pell Grants, Title I, Title IX, cease state grants for disabled students. They're going to stop the ability of parents of college students to take out Parent Plus loans. Graduate students cannot take out Graduate Plus loans. They're going to stop undocumented immigrants taking out federal loans entirely. They're going to deny loan access to students at schools that provide in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants. That means 25 states and Washington, D.C. cannot give loans to any undocumented immigrant if the Republicans have their way. They're going to end federal funding for any schools that teach race, racism, or gender sexuality. They're going to reinstate the patriotic education of the, quote, 1776 Commission. You might not have caught the 1776 Commission, but it was Trump's administrative agenda to fight the 1619 project that came out with all the history of what to teach and what the truth is. And they say, no, we're going to teach only 1776, and they're rewriting what can be told in schools. All schools that receive federal funds will institute military entrance exam of all students. Private student schools will be exempt. See page 134. There's going to be less protection for LGBTQ plus children and youth. They're going to institute a mandate that will be posted and listed in multiple places, found on page 333 and 334. On our first day in office, the next administration will signal its intent on a rulemaking that Title IX, with its additional assistance, sex will now properly be understood as a fixed biological fact, no other definition allowed. Official notice and comments shall be posted immediately. Emphasizing that definition of sex could mean only biological sex assigned by birth is the only way to interpret that. We understand without me telling you how many people, transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, how many people that put at risk and how many children that puts at risk. They're going to make it easier for charter schools not to keep data on gender, sex, or identity statistics, whereas Biden changed that and said all schools had to do it. In their own words, the new administration must quickly move to rescind these changes, which adds a new non-binary sex category to all data collection, and it will collect data directly for statutory enforcement authority on page 332. Two more statements. They're going to dictate what students can learn in higher education. On page 356, they say the special interest authors behind the project of 2025 want to direct funding to international business programs primarily to teach their preferred subjects to those students. These programs are geared towards providing students a better understanding of markets across the world in all different forms. Then they're going to stop funding PBS and NPR. That's the end of their education mandates about what they hope they're going to accomplish. If Lindsay can show you, I know I went probably, 32 minutes, 35 minutes, maybe.
You're good right now.
Okay,
The,
okay.
the chat is on fire. Is there anything else that you want to point out?
I want Lindsay to show them what they can download as to organizations working for the Christian national movement, the ones to watch and pay attention to. They can download that. I don't need to tell them about that. There are 2 things on there to pay attention to. At the bottom of that page of those working for Christian nationalism is the Southern Law Poverty Center's website, where you can get the new booklet that was put out for the summer. And this is our resources working against it, which is fine. I want to mention that one too. Okay, she's showing you first the resources working against Christian nationalism. Now, there's a lot of them. That's the ones I know the most about. Okay, and following them online, you can get on their email list, or you can check them at will as you wish. The other list are the organizations that are working to get this white nationalism movement going, and that's the other list she will show you. There is a organization in there that the Southern Poverty Law Center considers the biggest threat to American democracy, and it's the NAR. That is called the New Apostolic Reformation Society, and it is a white Christian nationalist international program as well that is very active, highly active. It was never brought up in the January 6th inquiries, but they were part of the January 6th momentum behind it, but they were never called to count or weren't part of it. But they have a 7-mountain school on the West Coast that people attend, rally conferences to rile them up, get them informed, and go back and keep pushing the white Christian nationalism. They feel abortion, LGBTQ plus, those are all to be listed as demonic mental illness behaviors. They are a very extreme group.
The fact that these terms are being used so openly, you know, we're a Christian nation and our creator and God and the Bible, it's crazy.
Yes.
But as somebody in the chat pointed out, like this is a long game. And
That's
they
right.
mentioned that the mandate for leadership in 1981, when Ronald Reagan was president, is like the framework for
Right.
Project 2025 that we're seeing. I do have a question here. I think it
Sure.
came from Phil. He wanted to know, like, with all of these proposals in Project 2025, how many of them, like, is there a division? Can it be handled with just an executive order, or does it need congressional approval, all these mandates?
A couple of them need congressional approval, but they think they've invented a way to go around them. A couple of them are congressional and constitutional, foundationally driven, but they think they have a way to go around them. One of them I mentioned was, if I look at my notes real quick, the one that they do want to go specifically around the Constitution was the statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's constitutionally enshrined, and they have a way they want to go around that to make it an executive order to do it. So the ones that are in Constitution, they have a way they're going to try to push around it. And don't forget, even if we don't get a Republican president, this agenda is not over. This agenda is the Republican agenda, the right-wing extremist public agenda. Not all Republicans, please hear me clearly. This is the right-wing extremist public agenda in America. And if we don't get a Republican president, they're still going to push through their state legislatures, which they're already doing. They're banning books. There were 6 to 10 schools that stopped summer school lunches, stopped the food program this summer. It's already starting. The Louisiana 10 Commandments on the walls of every school. This is already in place. This is in movement. This isn't waiting until Inauguration Day.
And you know, Kay, you bring up such an important point because their long game is strong, and they have been gerrymandering and working on taking state legislatures over for decades now.
Right.
To the point where they're, you know, when you look, you know, I always think of that map, right? Like all the red states that kind of go from like Idaho down
Right.
to, you know, Florida. And then, you know, we got the other states in between. And they, like, you know, I follow Piper from Missouri, Jess Piper. She is, you know, an educator turned activist, former candidate. And she lives in a rural part of Missouri. And she's, you know, talks all the time about how in so many of these places too, because it's been so gerrymandered to, you know, fit what they want. There are some, in many cases here in Arizona, it happens. There are no Democratic candidates. We're nonpartisan. We don't really care what
Right.
party you are. We just care about protecting the Constitution. And when they start, you know, just bandying about these religious terms in a way that makes it seem as if we you know, that we're a Christian nation and all of us subscribe to these ideologies, it's enough to make you crazy.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's a greater awareness now, but one thing that I'm worried about is the fact that so many of these local governing bodies, whether it's your, you know, county board of supervisors, right? Or, you know, whatever, who certifies elections, they've started writing. I just heard a story on NPR, which under this Project 2025 mandate would be gone. That's how I get all my news. But they were talking about a law in Georgia specifically that basically allows any election worker to deny the, you know, if they have a question in their head,
Right.
if they're a conspiracy theorist, they can question it. My concern is, because this energy right now that we've been feeling for the last month is palpable, and we feel this kind of hope that we haven't felt in a long time, but all of that could be undone with the way that some of these laws have now gone through in these extremist states where they're trying to deny the validity of elections. Are you concerned about that?
Extremely, extremely. The and the best word I have to use for it, my training as a psychotherapist, as a mental health worker, and an RN, the best word I have is there is a cult following mindset. I don't have any better word to describe it. It's so clear, and it's about the silent learner. We have a lot of silent learners in our culture. Silent learners believe authoritarian figures. Silent learners follow what, quote, the leader says because the leader's more educated or has more experience or has charisma. And that silent follower is a large portion of these people. Now there are some others that are just plain power hungry. That's all there is to about it. It is about power and money and greed. There's those two categories: the cult follower, the power hungry and greed. That's my assessment of the two dynamics of the extreme right wing. And you're right. We have no right to say this is a Christian nation. God didn't. I mean, we took this nation away from indigenous people. We took these lands away, and this is not our land. We're living on borrowed land and confiscated land, and we are a nation that's over 200 years old. But we don't have a God-given mandate that this is to be Christian, or that we were a Christian nation to start with. We never were. The founders were deists. They were
Yeah.
not Christian, and they were very careful not to put the word Christian or God. The word religion is only mentioned one time in the Constitution, and it's just really unnerving.
It really is. And I love the fact that it's at least now part of our nomenclature. People seem to know what Project 2025 is. You know, I will say that first of all, I'm so grateful and proud to represent this organization, because this is an organization that since 2010 has been screaming their heads off about white Christian nationalism. I don't even know if the founders of this organization had that exact phrase in mind, but they could see what is going on and what
Right.
continues to go on. And like you said earlier in your discussion, they really are just saying the quiet parts out loud now. The fact that they even use the term woke
Yes, several
is
times.
just, it's just such a whistle word for them. We are coming up on time, and I know that people have busy lives that they want to get to. It is a Friday. And I hope you all have wonderful, exciting plans for your weekend. Okay, I can't begin. I feel like we could probably have a part 2 of this discussion, really. But I can't even begin to express my gratitude for the just meticulous work you've done here in citing your sources. And I know that Lindsay shared a whole bunch of links. You'll want to click on them. You'll want to get familiar with this. And as Sandra pointed out earlier, this is not a time for us to be complacent at all.
Right.
There's so much energy right now with the Harris Walls campaign. And again, we're nonpartisan. There's so much energy. I get a little bit worried that we might have a repeat of 2016, right? Because I think so many people just thought, oh, she's got it in the bag. We don't have to worry about this. Now is not the time. So
Right.
Whoever you are and wherever you are in the state or in the nation, you need to find a good candidate. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican, as long as they object to this nonsense that is Project 2025.
Right.
And so, Kay, just to close this out, because I'm already at 101, this is a question I close out with. So, you're doing some pretty intensive research. When you go through all this stuff and you know what's happening in the world, how do you keep hope alive?
That's a very good question. Sometimes I have to ask it daily. Sometimes it's weekly. But my hope really foundationally lies in the fact that there are good people in this country. There are thinkers. There are people who understand values, right, wrong, compassion, humanity, dignity, rights, freedom. Those people have voices, and they're getting louder. And anytime I can support them, help them speak for themselves, can advocate, pass it on. One of the biggest learnings of my life is my liberation means nothing if I don't pass it on. And so to pass on whatever I've learned is a deep ingrained part of me. And whatever you learned today, if 2 pieces anybody learned today that was listening, and thank you for tuning in, take those 2 pieces and share them with one other person. Just share them with one other person. Pass it on. That is the only way this energy is going to stay alive and keep us educated and informed.
Well, Kay, that sounds pretty woke, but I'll allow it.
You know what? I have a statement. Oh, please call me woke. It's such a compliment.
I couldn't agree with you more. So with that, everybody, thank you so much again for joining us today. Let's all stay woke, shall we? And I
Yes.
hope you have a great weekend. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Kay. We'll see y'all
Thank you,
later.
Janine, Lindsay. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
take care.
Appreciate the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.